I've been all over Mexico. I've been all along the 2,000 miles of the border. My phone is blowing up. I was showing you yesterday from Border Patrol agents who are working, by the way, without a paycheck today, on this very day, and we'll do it tomorrow and every other day they don't get a paycheck because they believe in it. It's not like the president just came up with this obscure, abstract idea to build a wall the Democrats are fighting. He listened to the people in charge of the border, Border Patrol chiefs, CBP officials in the northern part of the border and the southern part of the border. And I've got emails and texts from both of them that said this is a crisis. This is a problem. We have brand new numbers just today from the Border Patrol of arrest of more bad guys.
So just in the last couple of days, 2 convicted sex offenders, 2 MS-13 gang members who were all previously detained at the border. These are numbers from the Border Patrol of MS-13 arrests at the border. This is just from October of 2017 to August 31st of 2018. 377 MS-13 gang members apprehended at the border. If you think drugs and crime and trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking are not happening, you're a fool.
Yeah.
You don't look at reality. And so when Ted Lieu and all these other folks go there and say it's a vanity wall, they've never been to that's wrong, other international flashpoints where walls work. Turns out our southern border is one of those international flashpoints now. Build it, stand by it, and stand firm.
And here's the nuance. The problem is that Democrats, remember, both parties agree on funding for some border security. They voted over $1 billion to improve fencing, which is a deterrent to that very problem. But yet when it comes to this political football of just Trump's wall, they want to resist on political grounds. That's why I called Nancy Pelosi No Walls Nancy, because she wants this standoff to last at least until January 3rd when she takes over.
Democrats are actually doing the bare minimum, though. Let's be clear about that. I mean, and let's face it, no matter what number Trump came up with, if Trump had said 3, if Trump had said 4, they would have resisted that. It's all about resisting. In fact, another group is resisting as well. Greyhound is resisting. Greyhound
the
is
bus company?
Yes. Telling riders of rights when the Border Patrol comes on board. They're actually reading them their rights.
The Washington Post headline is Greyhound tells riders of rights when Border Patrol comes aboard. And this is from Greyhound.com. They say, and that's the Washington Post. This is from Greyhound.com. We have no room for discrimination. If your English is limited, that's okay. Listen, a lot of people understand that if your English is limited when you come to the United States, that's okay.
That's from their website, right? So this is their website to would-be possibly people here illegally in the country, and instructing them on what to do if CBP or Border Patrol agents come onto the bus.
Border Patrol agents are trying to do their job, and it drives me crazy that they've been vilified, not only by members of the left and politicians on the left, but you have Hollywood, you now have Greyhound. Everyone's trying to make it that Border Patrol is trying to do evil. They're just trying to secure the border, which is part of our laws.
Yeah, I think you're so right. The debate of the future is these multinational corporations, one company, one nation or 2 or 3 or 10. They have to make some sort of a decision. Are you an American company or not? Do you view the world that way or not? Tucker talks about it all the time, and he's right. Just like the president, he's educating a lot of people on this issue. And in this case, you're like, well, Greyhound, you're like, what are you doing? Trying to circumvent our laws? A lot of people look sideways at that. They look at it as profit, but our laws actually should matter.
Yeah,
it's about the rule of law. Let us know what you think. Email us at friends@foxnews.com and weigh in.
Yep,
that's right.
Absolutely. And we are going to turn now to some headlines. We begin.
He's not going to stop him. He's going to try to stop him.
He's going to try.
He always loses.
He will fail.
He's like the Jets. Sorry, guys. All right.
Low blow.
It was low.
I mean.
All right. Sorry. Coming up on another story. Has ISIS been defeated? The critics say no, but President Trump says yes.
We have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly. We've taken back the land.
The debate heating up in Washington this week, but who's right? We'll break it down with Morgan Ortagus coming up next.
And 2 little boys shocked to find an early Christmas present under the tree, but what's inside surprises them even more. Look at this.
I'm watching it fall. Lots of people run.
Declaring ISIS is dead. Tweeting yesterday, when I became president, ISIS was going wild. Now ISIS is largely defeated, and other local countries, including Turkey, should be able to easily take care of whatever remains. We're coming home, but not everyone agrees with that.
A group like ISIS, they thrive on ungoverned space. Exactly the wrong time to do it. It was a decision recklessly made with very little coordination.
And to come out and say, and make a statement that is so definitive that ISIS has been defeated, it's just incredibly misleading.
So who's right? Let's ask national security analyst Morgan Ortagus. Morgan, help us out here. So, good morning. Thanks for being here. The president says ISIS is defeated. Now, they have been crushed in many ways, but where are we right now?
So we look, ISIS is still in Iraq and Syria. However, the president is right. What we're seeing is when he came into office, we had what I would call a terrorist army. So we saw in the Obama administration at the end, they did go after ISIS, but if it was after many years of letting it fester. So because of the action that the president has taken, the troops on the ground, we have seen it decimated from a terrorist army now to an insurgency.
98% loss of territory since 2014.
It's a big accomplishment. Remember, early on in the administration, we saw that big bombing campaign that the president ordered into Syria in order to save lives. That's when, so when people say that he's not tough enough on Syria or ISIS, he actually reportedly at the time, Mattis ordered recommended less of a bombing campaign than the president actually wanted. Why does that matter? You have to pay attention to what's going on the ground. So here we have, before the president came into power, territorial control of ISIS by ISIS in Syria and Iraq. And that's
you made this point, though. Yeah. It was almost 4 or 5 years between when we withdrew from Iraq and the recognition that ISIS has controlled what they've controlled. So by 2015, they've got all this territory across Iraq and Syria. Now we take President Trump becomes president, vows to crush ISIS. Very different.
So if we look at the last chart in the picture and then this one, here's the important point. A lot of people are saying this is going to be like when Obama withdrew from Iraq, President Obama. And so what happened though was when he withdrew, as I said, there was a 3 or 4 year period where we watched ISIS fester, where we watched it grow. We didn't take a lot of action. So if the president is going to withdraw, with these troops in the timeline that he proposed, the military, the president, his national security team, what they have to do is watch these areas very closely to make sure that it doesn't fester, and he can take action similar to what he took when he came into office.
So watch it more closely and take it seriously, which clearly Obama didn't by calling it the JV team.
Right.
Now, in the last couple of years, since 2014, high-value targets are very important. You got to take the head off the snake as well.
So when we talk about high-value targets in the military, we're typically talking about leadership positions. What's important to know is the YPG Kurds, who are our allies and have fought off ISIS for the past few years, have these makeshift prisons where they have about 1,000 detainees right now. Those ISIS detainees are core leadership. And so what's important as we draw down is to not only, stand by and try to protect the Kurds. The president could talk to Erdogan, the Turkish president, about this, but to make sure that we know what's happening with those 1,000 terrorists, because if they were released, then you could see ISIS.
That's a delicate dance, though, because the president has reportedly talked to Erdogan and said, you take out ISIS, but he wants to take out many of the Kurds, who you say are holding ISIS fighters, which is a big bargaining chip.
It's a big problem, where the YPG Kurds are a big problem because they've been our ally in fighting this. We've been a little overly dependent on them, in my opinion, but they do have 1,000, at least, these are estimates, public estimates of Al-Qaeda ISIS core leadership in their makeshift prisons.
So this terror army, ISIS, that tried to establish a caliphate, they've now gone underground to an insurgency.
Right.
How do we change that approach?
Well, here's what's so important is what we were seeing, at the end of the Obama administration, 15, 16, is the PR campaign. There were videos, there were beheading videos, right?
Yes.
And so they had ISIS recruiting people from around the world saying that we're bringing people into the caliphate. We sort of destroyed that PR mandate, which is incredibly important. Now we have to watch it closely going forward. Whether we withdraw, we have to keep the air campaign going.
If you don't take insurgencies seriously, they become terror armies.
Right.
That's the responsibility right now.
Absolutely.
Morgan Ortagus, thank you very much.
We've solved the world, Pete.
We did. We solved the world in 4 minutes. Griff, everything's fine. Cancel the show. We're done.
All right, good.
All right, coming up, me and the socialist from the Bronx, Alexandria, may actually agree on something. We'll tell you what she tweeted and why I'm backing it. I'm told I'm backing it. We'll see, maybe. And the liberal media isn't blaming Congress for the shutdown. Instead, they're pinning it on talk radio. But are they right? Our panel of radio talk show hosts here to respond live coming up.
Scared. He got shook because of the right-wing media.
It's not that he's a tyrant or a dictator. He's being dictated to by all talk radio.
Oh, the tyranny of talk radio. Our panel is here to react. Radio host Kathy Barnett, Michael Knowles, host of the Michael Knowles Show, and political science professor Dr. Jeannie Zaino, who should have a radio show. She's going to have one by the end of this segment. Guys, so all of the liberal media and Bob Corker, senator from Tennessee, is blaming talk radio for this. Kathy, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Is it
It
their
is
fault?
ridiculous. Americans have been wanting this wall ever since the Reagan years, right? But what we're seeing is a very sustained trend among Democrats and mainstream media. If they don't like the results of something, then their answer is to blame somebody. Blame someone, anybody, everybody, except for taking personal responsibility for their own failed policies. And what we're experiencing right now are Democrats willing to move heaven and earth before they fund the border wall, before they do the things that the American public is asking for. And trust me, I get it, right? Because for many of these politicians, this is just business as usual. This isn't personal, it's just politics. But what they don't seem to understand is that for many Americans, myself included, the building of that southern border wall is completely personal.
So,
to
Kathy,
them.
you talk about the politicians. So Michael, Bob Corker says that talk radio completely flipped Trump. Is that true?
Well, this is not about the tyranny of talk radio. This is about the tyranny of campaign promises. If Bob Corker knew more about keeping those, perhaps he would be returning to the Senate this year. President Trump has done much better than his predecessors on keeping his promises. What we are pointing out in talk radio, in podcast, in the popular political media is that this will be the defining moment for the Trump presidency. Can he keep his central campaign promise? Thus far, he has showed tremendous moral clarity and political leadership on it. This is the last chance to do it. The majority of Americans want a wall, they want border security, and President Trump should fulfill that.
We certainly hear, I mean, that's the pulse of talk radio and representative of many Americans. Jeannie, what do you say?
Well, you know, I think this is something repeatedly we see in the modern presidency, which is that if you are a Democrat elected to the presidency, you are most vulnerable on the left. And if you are a Republican elected to the presidency, you are most vulnerable from the right. So, of course, the president, to Michael's point, made a promise that he now has to keep. And he wants to make sure his base knows that. So that's what we're seeing here. But the real question is not if talk radio is to blame or who's to blame. The real question here is about sound policy. What is the policy to secure the border? Is it a wall? Is it the Democrats' other type of wall? Is it something else? Effectiveness is what we should be talking
Let's
about,
talk
not
about
who's
policy
to blame.
for a second, though. Here is Speaker-designate Nancy Pelosi and what she sees as a moral issue when it comes to the wall. Listen.
Most of us, speaking for myself, consider the wall immoral, ineffective, inexpensive. We have a responsibility, all of us, to secure our borders, north, south, and coming in by plane on our coast. That's a responsibility we honor, but we do so by honoring our values as well.
But yet she's willing to pony up at least $1 billion or more for border fencing. Kathy?
Now, if you remember, last year she was saying that an effective border security is just to let our grass grow tall. But we have very real issues. I was looking at what ICE put out in their latest report, showing that the removal of illegal aliens are up 11%. They removed over 1,600 individuals with homicide convictions, over 3,700 with sexual assault convictions, not opinions, but convictions. We have real problems. We have our own problems, and we don't need to import other people's problems into our country.
Without a doubt, and we just had CBP arrests of MS-13, more MS-13 guys. Michael, quickly, I want to get you guys to weigh in. What do you say?
Well, on the Democrat solution to the border wall, I wrote a blank book called Reasons to Vote for Democrats. I'm going to write a sequel called The Democrat Solution to the Border Crisis. They've been talking about it for years, politicians of both parties. But when it actually comes time to vote to fulfill that promise, they come up short because they're all talk and they're no action. And right now is the moment. It's put up or shut up, do or die. And I'm very pleased that President Trump is taking the leadership on it. And unfortunately for Democrats, they're going to frown while we secure our border.
All right, Dr. Zaino, I want to give you the last word.
I think we should speak to the experts who say that technology, personnel, and infrastructure are the three ways to secure the border. Right now, they are most in need of new 21st century technology to secure that border. That's what we should be focusing on.
I'm not sure. We've got to go. I'm not sure I totally agree with you because I spent a lot of time on the border with the Border Patrol chiefs, and they say that infrastructure, you got to have all three in the infrastructure.
But you need technology to support that infrastructure.
You do, but again, and I've got to run this, but, you know, when the president makes his case, he's just putting his opinion out there based on what these chiefs say. Thanks very much, guys. Kathy, Michael, Dr. Zano, Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
All right. Some teachers can help but declare their hate for President Trump. But now one state has a plan to keep politics out of the classroom. We'll tell you about it. And we just talked about Democrats like Nancy Pelosi. Well, she doesn't want a border wall, but she has no problem building walls around her home. Diamond and Silk are exposing the hypocrisy. There they are. Merry Christmas, Diamond and Silk. And they're going to show us the walls that No Walls Nancy has put up.
Tolerate just about anything, even their own hypocrisy.
We will not build a wall.
To put a wall there is in my view, ineffective, too expensive, almost immoral.
We can't just put walls up all around America.
Those are scenes.
Was gone home. I mean, the president, listen, he gets his paycheck, he gives his paycheck away.
That's right.
He sacrificed himself endlessly for the United States of America and for the American people.
That's
but
right.
where is Congress at?
Yeah.
I just tell you
and
something.
Why are we still paying Congress? Our tax dollars are still paying Congress to sit up there and do absolutely nothing.
That's right.
I agree with
People
that.
are excited about our president and what he's doing for this country. What's the point I'm trying to make?
They're still getting a paycheck, that's right, and so is the Mueller investigation. Listen, Diamond and Silk, thank you very much. It is time for us now to say goodbye.
Well said, ladies.
so
Merry
much,
Christmas.
ladies.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. And we're going to give you some headlines now. New evidence shows the gunman in the deadly Christmas market shooting in France had ties to ISIS. Investigators found a video of Sheriff Shakait pledging his allegiance to the terrorist group. Shakait died in a shootout with police 2 days after the attack earlier this month. 5 people were killed and more than a dozen injured. When the government shuts down and workers are furloughed, Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says congressional salaries should be furloughed too. She tweeted in part, "It's completely unacceptable that members of Congress can force a government shutdown on partisan lines and then have congressional salaries exempt from that decision. Have some integrity."
Let it be known, I totally and 100% agree with her.
As do I. What's happening to us, Pete?
I know.
420,000 federal employees are working through the shutdown without pay. Teachers could potentially lose their jobs for getting political. A new bill proposed in Arizona would prevent teachers from endorsing candidates. It would also ensure teachers give students both sides of controversial arguments and let students know they're allowed to disagree. The Republican state lawmaker behind the bill says he proposed it after receiving complaints from parents. And 2 little boys get a big surprise from their Navy dad just in time for Christmas.
Wait. Look inside.
Little Grayson and Jackson asked their elf on the shelf to bring their dad home for Christmas. The next day, he arrived. He's been deployed for 8 months. And those are your headlines. That is the best Christmas present ever. Your dad coming home?
Wonderful.
Man, can't beat that.
Those videos never get old.
They actually don't. You watch it like, here we go again. You're like, I'm choking off tears.
It's true. It's true. All 3 of us.
All right, the stock market in a free fall as Wall Street suffers its worst week in a decade. But the news ain't all bad. Consumer confidence and GDP are sky high. So what's the real status of the economy? A financial expert here to break it down next.
And it's a Christmas tradition, kids sitting on Santa's lap. But now some parents say there's a hashtag Me Too problem with it.
Stop it.
Really?
Oh,
No, come on.
Kidding me.
Friday with the NASDAQ closing out the week in bear market territory. But despite the turbulence, consumer confidence remains high, sky high, beating analysts' expectations in December.
The optimism comes amid stellar economic news, a U.S. unemployment rate at a near half-century low, and hourly wages finally heading upward.
Here to explain is former International Trade Commission chief economist Peter Morici. Peter, thanks for being here today. Break this down. So you look at the markets, you could have one story. You look at wages and unemployment, there's an entirely different story. What's most important?
Well, the economy is very robust and corporate profits continue to grow. Wages are going up, and we can expect that 2019 will be a very good year. We can't have 4% growth long term in the United States. Population growth is too slow. But we can have 2.5, 3%, which is a darn sight better than the Obama years. Basically, the stock market is being talked down by the financial press in New York. Bloomberg, which is an instrument of a Democratic presidential candidate, and the Wall Street Journal. If you read the news content of the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump can't do much right. There's little vignettes from people like Bob Davis across the board that basically are constantly criticizing him on trade and tax policy and so forth. And it's really fallacious and foolish and wrong. But the trouble is, let's face it, that's what Wall Street reads. It creates a panic. The fund managers, money managers, and so forth. Also, Mr. Powell is not much help.
Peter, what do you we see these numbers, 3.4% increase in the GDP the third quarter, 5.3% increase in retail sales this year. Lots of great economic news. What policies do you mostly attribute that to? Is this as a result of tax cuts? Is this as a result of business investment being incentivized in certain sectors? What policy can we point to?
Well, it's a 1-2 punch. Basically, the tax policy, people have more money in their pockets. Corporations have more incentive to invest. And in 2018, that really lifted consumer sales. And on the business side, we don't see it in plant and equipment. They don't really need a lot more machinery. What they're doing is they're spending the money on worker training. They're investing in their workers big time. And that doesn't show up in the investment figures. So again, the Wall Street Journal says, oh, the corporate tax cuts a failure because we're not seeing them buy more machinery. Well, no, they're investing in people. And the investment data doesn't pick that up. It actually goes into the consumption data. In 2019, business and consumers get another lift because of the Trump energy policy. Gasoline at $2.15, $2.20, $2.30 a gallon, depending on where you live. I know in Manhattan it's more like $3, but it's not $4 anymore. That's a big increase in what people have in their pockets. And, you know, if you're running a nursery or a florist or a dry cleaner, energy is a big issue. Yeah. So this is important. So next year we're going to get a second lift.
Peter, you mentioned Jerome Powell, chairman of the Fed. Should he stay? Should he be fired? Does Trump have the ability to do so?
Mr. Trump does not have the ability to do so. Unfortunately, this public dialogue is not useful. I have to say that. However, do I think he's competent and should stay? Absolutely not. He's a lawyer, basically trying to run the Fed off of Cliff Notes. He's like one of my principles of economics students trying to do this with me whispering in his ear. Let me ask, and people say, well, he's got advisors. Let me ask your viewers this. How would you feel about Peter Morici on the Supreme Court if I said, I'm going to hire some great lawyers to advise me? You know, really, there's only one honorable thing for Powell to do after last week. He really made a fool of himself in his press conference afterwards. He said that running down the Fed balance sheet, which Mr. Trump has criticized, has no effect on the markets. Heck, the whole purpose of running up the balance sheet was to improve the markets. So how can the reverse not be true?
Peter, I might still vote for you for the Supreme Court. I just want to say that.
I'd love to go up there. We have a great old time, you know?
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for joining us.